Hello, this is Christophe de Dinochin, and I'd like to give you a quick status update on DB48X, a project that I started on October 20. It's now November 13, and the goal of this project is to bring a user experience similar to the HP48, HP49, or HP50 calculators, which were all based on reverse Polish Lisp or RPL. So RPL has a command line, and you enter things in a stack that can have as many levels as you want, and you perform operations in reverse Polish notation. The calculator works like a regular calculator for basic operations, but unlike the GM42 original firmware, you have this command line, and there is an inspiration from GNU RPL that the command line has a status that changes depending on what you're typing. So for instance here, the cursor changed to A to tell me that I'm entering algebraic, and it became white. There is an ABC indicator there to tell me that I'm entering symbols now, or letters. So this is a common design idea of this project, is that I'm trying to make sure that you don't type too many keys. So in that case, for instance, typing exeq, that's for execute equation, and that brought me the codes that are used for symbols in RPL, and it entered alpha mode automatically. So for instance, I can store a variable like this with stow, and recall will bring me the variables menu, where you see that I have the variable that I just created there. So now if I record that on the stack, I have 1, 2, 3. And I can divide it by 2. I can recall the value with shift. So you see that we have menus that are associated with the soft keys here. And when I shift, it highlights which menu I'm going to select. So simply using the variable is going to evaluate it. With shift, I'm going to recall it. And with the long shift, I'm going to store into it. So long shift triggers what is the equivalent of the right shift function on the HP48. That's because we really need to have the ability to have multiple operations per key. We just can't do with just a single shift and all the functions we need for the HP48 class of calculators. So why do we need the difference between recall and execute? Let me show with a simple program. So I'm going to create a program that adds 1. So I used shift program. I have the symbols of a program in RPL. I'm going to add 1. And I'm going to store that in a variable called incur, for instance, for increments. Now, if I do 2 incur, then it executes the program and it increments the value. If I shift incur, then I get a program and I can modify it. For instance, so let me use the down key here. Oh, we have an interesting bug there. So since we are missing keys compared to the original calculator, and in particular we don't have left and right keys, so up and down act as left and right. So now I'm adding 2. I can store that in my anchor variable. So now if I recall it, I'm adding 2. Oops. And if I increment, I now add 2. So as you can see, there are still many little bugs in the firmware that I need to figure out. And so for instance here, when you hit the down key, you bring something to the command line, but there are recent changes that I made that seem to have broken this, so I need to investigate. Okay, so we had the variable menu here. We have many other menus, and the main menu is with the sigma plus key, which brings, as you can see, a math menu. And if I do shift sigma plus, I get the top level menu that has the math menu as a submenu. So that menu is the same that I saw before. And so for instance, if I want to have the sin function, I can have it here, but I can also have it from the trig menu, and I can have sin here. I get the same function, but I have other functions that I don't have access to directly from the keyboard. For instance, the second. Okay, that particular function is not yet implemented. One interesting aspect of the design is that the HP41, for instance, had this feature where if you held a key, then it would cancel its operation, but it will also show the keys that I was doing as I was doing them. So here, if I hit tangent, for instance, you see that the function name appears in the top right of the screen. If I hold 10, then it's not just going to cancel it, it's going to show me some online help for it. So now I can look at various functions, and I can go to the home topic for the help, and there are hyperlinks in there, so I can go to the next link, for instance, and see how the soft menus work. So this documentation is similar to the documentation that you find on the web, and it gives you a lot of information about the calculator, though of course it's not complete at the moment. There is a history for where I was in the help, and I can exit the help with exit. The key assignments, I tried to make them match what is labeled. So we saw some exceptions already. We saw that execute is used to enter symbols. We saw that recall brings the variable menu. rdown brings the stack menu. Goto, there is no goto on the HP48, so it brings various operations for programs like loops. So for instance, I can create a loop. So I'm doing 1 million loops. And we can put that in a variable called loops. And we can try to evaluate that now. Now, I don't know if you have an idea of how long it would take to do 1 million loops on a genuine HP48, but here it executes it in about 8 seconds. So it's much faster thanks to the faster CPU. What other interesting keys do we have? So we have fraction related things with the percent menu. We have constants with the pi with a menu brought up by the pi key. We have alphabetic mode with alpha. So I can enter letters, and Shift Alpha like this will bring me to lowercase. So I can enter lowercase letters, and that's a toggle. Now, because alphabetic entry is much more common on the HP48 than on the DM42, there is a shortcut for alpha, which is to hit Shift twice. So if I hit Shift twice, I get alpha entry. So a reminder of the shift logic: you have Shift, again you get alpha, again you're back to the main keyboard layout. If you hold Shift, then you get a right shift, which is useful, as we saw, for the storage menu, for instance. Last is going to give me last args, like stack, etc. That's not implemented yet. We have modes in with shift modes, plotting and display functions, solver, symbolic operations, matrix and vector operations, statistics. All this is not implemented. Whenever you have something that is grayed out, it means it's not implemented. Now, when you have more than 6 menu entries, you can go to the next one with the rightmost key here, and you can go to the left with this arrow here. The base menu gives me, the base menu gives me base number operations, and so I can enter hexadecimal numbers, for instance. One thing that is special is that when you have this menu here and you have a hash, so you selected a hash to enter a base number, you see that the cursor changes to B for base number, and this B here tells me that I can enter hexadecimal numbers directly like this. So this is a handy shortcut. I don't need to shift to alpha to have these operations. And then you have the usual set of operations, like for instance, I can do this XOR, so I want to go to the next. Let me XOR that with 23. Interesting. Why is it unhappy? Okay, I need to investigate that one. So I guess that applies to, so a number of different effects for things that I know used to work. Now, the reason many things are broken is because I just implemented big number arithmetic, which, so I used to do the computations using CPU operations. And right now for testing, it's doing everything in big num. And so a lot of stuff that used to work is a bit broken right now. I apologize for that. So, but you saw how errors are displayed, and that's true as well for errors about domains, etc. So you have some error handling in place already. An interesting menu that is specific to this platform is the setup menu, which brings you back to the Swiss Micro's usual menu. And so we have units and conversions here. We have flag-related operations, probability functions like factorial, etc. So whenever you see a little gray next to a menu entry, it means it's not implemented yet. And as you can see, a lot is not implemented at the moment, obviously. Program functions are functions for the programmers. So we have, for instance, tests like if, then, etc. We have comparisons, less than, and so on. And we have loops. Finally, the print is for I/O operations. I don't know exactly what the layout will be for this one. Show will be reserved for showing various representations of objects that don't fit easily on the screen. A bit similar to the selection of the best display on the HP48 and follow-up. As we saw, program is used to enter programs on the command line. So when I'm in programming mode or when I'm in alpha mode, RS stands for space. However, when I'm in direct mode, it stands for eval. So it does the evaluation of the program. So here I'm going to evaluate that and get 28. Finally, when you're entering programs and use alpha mode, there is something very handy, which is the catalog of functions. So that's catalog here. And that gives me a complete list of the functions, but it's also an autocomplete. So for instance, let's say I switch to alpha. I type CO, and you see that, for instance, I have compare, complex, cos H, and there are comparisons. Oops. So let me try that again. Something went wrong there. So you can see there is a lot of stuff that is somewhat broken. So when I'm in alphabetic mode like this, I don't need to shift for the catalog. I simply hit plus and I get the catalog. So here, something very weird on how the catalog works. Probably need to revisit that part of the demo as well. So it seems to be working up to that point, but okay, so let me select, for instance, the sign, and it's replacing it with, and if I want to have, for instance, I'm still in alpha mode, so I type AB, I got ABS, and it replaces it. So that's a good way to enter functions more quickly from the whole catalog of what is available in the system. But as you can see, there are still some kinks that I need to work out in practically all aspects of the firmware. This is very, very early. So of course, I don't recommend you install it or try it, except maybe to report bugs, but most of them I'm likely to be aware of them. One last thing I want to show you is that the editor, like there is really a bug on. Yeah, so the editor, like on the HP48, is multi-line. So if I hold right shift enter, interesting, even that doesn't work. Oh, I need to be in alpha mode. So I can enter multiple lines. And in that case, shift up, shift down will move the cursor up and down, while left and right will continue to, well, simply using the up and down will continue to move it left and right. You can see that my catalog is updating as I go. I think that's about all I can show for the moment. There are many aspects that remain to be done.